Hello there, friends, fans, and fam. This is Bill MacDonald, the reading and writing doctor, and today, for fifth grade, I'm going to be a detective, a private eye investigator, maybe undercover, maybe wearing some camouflage because we're doing a secret investigation looking for fingerprints, footprints that are known as clues that respond to a question or an idea. So one of the things that you might have your kids do is get themselves, or you get one per team, a little detective private eye magnifying glass to go inspecting for clues. So the question we're going to look at today focuses on a character trait, a personality that's positive about one person in a story. And sometimes you can use the other characters' actions and reactions to determine how a person is different. And so I'm going to use several cool activities in my reading and writing guide to kind of help you work through this problem. But I do want to say, you want to write this down. The fifth grade English extended constructed response had 91,489 students get from a reader a 0 in organization and development and another 0 in conventions. And in most cases, if the student had to get a 0 because they couldn't do anything from the first four bullets that were on their prompt page, they automatically received a 0 in conventions because you have to get uh, a response in the box that's based on what's being asked, the topic that's being written about. So the first thing that I'll do, in fact, no, the first thing I want to do is I want to show you a necklace. This is called a giving key, and it's based on character traits. But in the case of giving keys, I have written or had a friend of mine in Progreso, Mexico, write words on hundreds of them by now that represent certain character traits that people really want, but they don't have yet. So this one says love, and there's so many people out there. So the key word on this giving key is love. And the idea is that I keep this key until I have love, till my love tank is full, whatever that means to me specifically in terms of what speaks love to me, or until I see somebody who needs love more than I do. And these are only like $5 in Mexico. So if you see one of the words on the character trait page where you know that you would really love to have that specific trait, or you know someone who needs it, uh, then feel free to let me know. If you are in the paid emergency room for extended responses and editing, revising, the online recorded training that we're doing throughout this summer and into the school year, feel free to let me know. I'll include at no extra charge for you one of these keys with a certain word. Just email me at the email address that's right there behind me, and I'll send that to you just for being part of our summer ER training. Uh, I just think it's a great thing. There are so many students that are missing so many different, what many of us know as fruits of the Spirit, because if you are not taught those things by the people who are supposed to love and care for you the most, then you're not going to be able to know how to embody those character traits or absorb and grow in them and become a kind of person that uh, is able to have the love, joy, peace, patience, long suffering, kindness, goodness, self-control, and so many other ones that we're going to see on uh, our sheet today. So let's get right into it. First, I'm going to show you what the fifth grade had, and what we've been doing is the besties, where we look for the bullets on that page where the prompt is, the B. Then we E, look for the word explain and essay, sometimes composition. Then we will STIES, will separate the topic into E, Z, E, Z, sections. There you go. And so using my hand, and because when I'm gonna be teaching reading, I'll show you how to infer. I'm rubbing my fur. That's called reading between the lines. Whereas when we start to do writing, it always will say explain, which means writing between the lines. That would mean that the actual lines, whatever we're talking about, the scene, the 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 line in a play, or the line in a poem, or a sentence in a paragraph, or something specific like that. So our fifth grade one that got 91,489 double zeros from two readers, and about 25% of the entire fifth grade had these specific words. When your kids went to the word explain and separated it into sections that they could understand. Explain is the prompt cue. How is the idea that the students will come up with based on evidence. The idea based on evidence, and then some sort of closing that ties everything together. Kim, or who, shows determination what throughout the story. Now, here's a suggestion for those of you who have kids who struggle. If they can't make it through the entire story, well, they won't get a 5, but I can perhaps get a 1 or a 2 if I can at least get them to find something about the character showing determination at the beginning. So if you think of your evidence, you can say, because it says throughout the story, you would want something from the beginning, some evidence from the middle, evidence from the end, that you'll explain and explode with vocabulary and the voice, and lots of great things that we're going to talk about as this training progresses throughout the summer. So there needs to be a conflict, some sort of thing that happens. There's going to be an action that causes a reaction throughout the story. So usually it's some sort of a conflict, something that happens in the plot that creates a need for determination. So if your students do not know what determination is, then step one is going to Besties, and I'm going to show you something that I've been putting together uh, in 11 by 17 that all of you in the ER training, I'm building some key things that kept and will continue to keep your students from getting past zeros. And so the B that I want to talk about for this lesson is this one right here, that if they don't know what the word determination means inside their brain, B, they're going to have to look inside a book, B, and that book in this case would be a dictionary. So they have to be able to learn how to navigate the dictionary and look up keywords, because the entire prompt, the 10-point possibility of the writing, is based on your students' understanding of that keyword and what it means. So the more that you can add some of those words from the character trait pages that I made for you, the more your students are going to be able to be prepared in their brains without having to spend so much time going into the book called the dictionary. So, coming back out of there, I'm going to show you that we just happened to have the word determination already in my list of character traits. So it says here, when you finish reading a poem, a play, literary nonfiction, or other genres, selections, passages, one of these words might come to your mind. Use it to help you think about the theme or the message or the actual character traits of whoever it is uh, that you're reading about. Uh, that the author is trying to share with you. These words can become phrases and eventually sentences that you write or type. So we would need to have, in this case, the word uh, uh, determination as part of the sentence, because that was in the topic. And so when we were talking about breaking the topic into sections, we would have the students plug the pieces back in that would say, Kim shows determination throughout the story by blah, something that she does or says or thinks. You know, there's a saying that says life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. And your reactions are not always spoken words. Sometimes they're just things that go on in your head. Sometimes there's feelings that you express with your heart. And so when they tell you, don't just tell me how you feel, show me how you feel, means, oh, I'd love to know, because you feel a certain way about something positive or negative that happened, then how can you show those feelings, which is uh, not necessarily what I'm going to focus on today, because I've already read the selection. But I do want you to notice there's a bunch of tally marks here. So what I did was, in an earlier post, I asked several of you, and probably a couple of hundred of you responded uh, with different ideas. And so I put all of the ones of mine on page one and place tally marks for the ones that you guys came up with. What I asked what your best quality is, and so all of these are considered positive character traits that hopefully all of us would strive for. And then I made a page two with another column, which you guys shared with me, and then I had two blanks on the second and third column. So as I mentioned, something that would be very important is to go to the uh, dictionary. And so I'm going to show you when I went to it before I get into the uh, forensic finger and footprints. And it says here for a paired passage, but what I was sharing with you is that if we can go when we're teaching kids about things that are difficult and rigorous, if we can go from what I call the known, my own self, or people that I know well, and learn about my determination, then it'll be easier to go to the unknown, another suspect, the one in the story that we're going to be reading about. And so the question, the topic, as a reminder, did say, how does Kim show determination throughout the story? Let me put a question mark there. Um, Even though they weren't really asking a question, they just said explain how she does that. Okay. Now, so when you go to the dictionary definition of determination, it says a firm decision or at least an intention to reach a desired goal. So something that you want to do uh, in a story. So you have a plot called a goal, something, a target that you're trying to reach. And they want to know what it exactly that shows Kim's firm decision, or at least her intentions, to reach the goal that we'll find about in the story. And it happens to be wanting to go on a camping trip with her family. Okay. So instead of using the left column for passage one and the right column for passage two and comparing and contrasting, because that's what happens whenever you're doing paired passages. The difficult questions are the ones that are about how the how someone or something in the passages that are different are the same, or how they're different. And so we would compare those. But what I did here was when the conflict happens, when the camping trip gets postponed, I wanted you to compare Kim, this right side over here. We'll use footprints for her. So we've got to look for the right clues because they're asking us about Kim's determination. And so just for the sake of learning about attitudes and reactions, I used the fingerprint side to learn a little bit about her family's reactions when things go wrong. So, because you can't go straight from reading the topic, the prompt, to restating it, that doesn't really help. You need to go to some evidence and find some evidence. And so your kids who struggle, instead of trying to go through the entire story, if they can have at least one idea that works, let me show you my hand here. If this is their idea, their central idea that they place inside the introduction, I don't need e- evidence, evidence, make an E here, from the beginning, the middle, and the end. If your students who struggle can at least come up with one, I want you to notice that I can make the sign language term I love you based on I have an idea that we'll call the introducing of the topic, determination, the idea, how Kim does it or shows it, with at least one example that I'll try to explain, and then I'll try to close by restating. And so if your kids can do that, even though they can't have the endurance, there's my I love you, even though they might not have the endurance for the whole selection, you probably will get them past zero land by at least responding to the topic on some of it. So as we look through here, and I do want to show you that um, I got my storytelling remote started, and I wanted to be able to use it because we said that life happens at full speed and reading and writing happen in slow motion. So I'm going to turn on the power of my remote and it's hard to just skip everything because we have to make sure that we're slowing down when we get to the parts that are focused on Kim and the ways that she shows patience. So we'll fast forward and sometimes push play and we'll slow down and pause when we get to the focus. And if some kids need repetition, we can push the rewind button and go back and read that part again so we can understand it, so we can learn the character's voice, that we can mute if we need to. Sometimes, like in plays, there's a lot of dialogue going on, but sometimes we need to mute them for a second and think, why are they saying that? Not just what they're saying, but why are they saying that? And how are they saying that? Because it's not always what comes out of your mouth, it's the reason you're saying things and how you're saying things. Um, who you're saying them to. And then, of course, we would need to put up that stop sign where we close. If you think of the power button as the introducing of the topic and idea, and the stop button as the closing, then there you have an English storytelling narrative remote. And I already also have this in Spanish for those of you that are not sure if you'd be able to translate that. Well, if you're part of our group, just let me know and I'll send you the Spanish version of this. Okay, and so if you ever forget what some of the buttons mean or stand for, the page 20 has the remote and page 20 has the button by button explanation. And what we want to focus on here is the focus button, uh, not the title in this case, but the topic. The the main idea of the question was Kim's determination throughout the essay so that we can turn it into a CIS, a central idea statement. Because again, I'm trying to make sure you understand that we're not trying to get threes, fours, and fives in organization development. We're trying to just get away from those 100, sorry, 91,489 zeros. So I fast forwarded through the story called The Camping Trip until I got to certain things and I kind of wrote based on Kim because that's what the question was about. And so I can sit here and show you all of these, but I want you to notice that they were in paragraphs. And I have one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight different pieces of evidence that I could use to come up with an idea. But like I said, with your kids who struggle, we can hopefully find at least one or two, or if you see me holding my hand up here, one to three. One, not two, but one to three, either one or two or three examples of evidence so that you can explain. So my thought process here is why are we trying to get kids to explain three examples of evidence? if we haven't even showed them how to explain one. So before we can even get to doing that, I've got to figure out based on evidence what idea could I get across. And so there's the paragraphs that I used. So now I'm going to go straight to my forensic footprints page and kind of try to show you my paragraphs. Paragraph 4, Kim, is this right side here? The clues, the evidence based on the stanza, the scene, or the section, and it'll be in paragraphs in this case. And so the numbers 1 through 6 are just how many that your kids are able to find, and you can put the location of the evidence uh, on the lines and what kind of evidence it was. So on paragraph four, she shares her thoughts. She wants to prove her skills after reading instructions about putting the tent together for hours. So through her thoughts, she's kind of letting us know that she's a go-getter, that she's just going to keep going until she's able to follow those instructions and get that tent put together. Paragraph 8. Here's a conflict. Okay. I'm going to put that over there. It's real important to the story because unless we have some kind of a conflict or a problem that needs a resolution, a conflict that needs resolution, it's going to be hard to show your determination. The trip gets canceled because of bad weather. They hear it on the news, and everyone, including Kim, shouts out all at the same time, "Oh no." Okay. The difference is that in that same paragraph, the mom, she gives up too easily. She starts making excuses and talking about the importance. Well, we have to work anyway. The kids have soccer games, they have swimming lessons. There's a family reunion coming up. And so all we hear from mom is a bunch of excuses. So that's basically the opposite of determination. Jalen, Kim's brother, spends paragraph 11 and 13 just crying and pouting. That's not determination, that's negative. Paragraph 12, the dad sees Jalen crying, and he does kind of pat him gently on the shoulder, shows affection, but he offers an alternative. Let's just do some popcorn and a movie. I guess dads sometimes, this is stereotyping, but sometimes they just want to look for the easy way out. So let's continue back. How does Kim react after the initial verbal dialogue of, oh no? Paragraph 14, her words are, Dad, get the tent and the flashlight from, let me finish that thought there, from the car. Okay. So she says something. So what I want to show you is on page, hopefully I have it here. I'm sure that I do because I pulled it out. There it is. Okay. I'm trying to learn about a certain character. And so on page 22, in your reading and writing guide, it kind of asks lots of questions. And the ones I want to focus are the distinguishing features, not the way she looks necessarily, but if you look right here, how does he, and in this case she, talk and act differently than the others in the experience? She shows determination by not giving up on the camping trip, while the others are willing to either cry or make excuses or do alternatives. And so that's what I thought was the most important, that from this understanding characters on page 22 of your little reading and writing guide. And then we'll get to the potato head. So she said something, and so I'll put a little mouth there inside our paper potato head. And I have several real ones that I buy from Walmart so that I can show my students with a real one something that they would have laminated. And I want you to notice that even though this one is in color, and it would be awesome if your whole class could get a color version of this, and we are focusing on a play. Uh, the title was called The Camping Trip, and the prompt was, so that's the title. So you see here, title topic, and the topic was Kim's determination. And your kids have to keep in mind from the using the B book dictionary that we're looking for a firm decision or intention to reach her desired goal. So her first reaction is, "What? Oh no." And then I have here that she um, says, "Dad, get the tent and the flashlights from the car." So she still wants to use the tent. It doesn't tell us. And why am I putting the little cheeks? Because when she has dialogue with quotation marks, I'm gonna make a mouth like that. If it was a dialogue about eating, I would just draw a mouth and put a little tongue. And so this one is, as you see on top, is called "Let Their Voice Be Heard." Let me know a little about this person through her thoughts, opinions, her emotions, her the vocabulary she uses, her actions and her reactions, because of the causes and effects you get to know about a lot of people. Figurative language that expresses her character, or little quotes and truisms. And so what I was going to say is even though this is in color, because you can see that for each little poker chip that you can use to put inside the opening of the real potato head, your students can make tally marks next to whatever it is that you're talking about. So this wouldn't be senses, this would be as something you'd be saying in that case. And so then I began to realize I might have forgotten something. So I pushed the rewind button on the remote and I saw that she had some thoughts there. All the plans gone, she has in her head. Or were they? So all the plans gone is negative, but then she turns it around and has a question that she asks herself, were they? So she keeps her mind focused on the positive, even though it probably wants to travel to something negative. Paragraph 17. Her dad asks her if she needs help, and she says very clearly, I know what to do. Okay. So that shows some determination because it would have been easy just to accept help from dad, or in many cases, kids, I'm going to number these to see how many things that are spoken, um, will let other people do things for them, but she's so determined, she's so intending to reach her goal of camping that she says that she can do this. And that's why she asks um, about dad getting the tent and the flashlights from the car. So apparently, we're going to infer that it's already getting dark so they can see, or so they can use them later when it's time. Next clue are some actions. Paragraph 18, she spent a half an hour in the backyard putting the tent together. And so you see that because I'm numbering, I can see uh, where are these in the middle? Where are they? Where are where are some examples of evidence at the beginning? And where are some examples of evidence towards the end? So if you're going to teach your kids throughout the story, then you might want to focus on at least one beginning, one middle, and one end. The one that they'll be able to explain with maybe a sentence or two, because I noticed that some students were able to get threes on development and organization by just supporting the evidence they found with sometimes even just one sentence. I don't need five, six, seven, eight, nine sentences. Probably I just need three or four or five details in one sentence that kind of explain how her thoughts, her words, and in this case down here, her actions show her determination. So if Kim is willing to spend 30 minutes in the backyard alone putting this tent together, possibly in the dark, needing a flashlight, who knows, then that's one on its own that I can tell that shows determination. How? Well, she's by herself. When? It's probably at night, where it's in the backyard instead of over in the uh, park or wherever it was they were gonna go. Who is it? It's Kim and no one else there helping her. And when? Uh, it's gonna also be a half an hour. Uh, So she's willing to take whatever time it takes. So I basically showed you that I would be able to use this one alone for kids who struggle to say, you know what, she was able to show determination by through her actions. And then I can go into detail about paragraph 18. But one last one. So we'll put some actions back there. Her actions, her reactions. So I'm gonna read here. She took a half an hour to do it. She's in the backyard. Um, I'm going to plug in an I there, and because she let us see where she was, and she's putting the tent together and another action. Okay. So when she's finished, she comes back inside and she tells her brother in paragraph 20, and instead of placing how many, you could put the paragraph number. So an alternative here would be in paragraph 20, what she says is the trip might be canceled, but we can still camp out in our tent. And her secondary part in that same paragraph is out to the backyard. All right. And I know that there was one more dialogue. She said, Dad, would you get Jalen's bag from the car, please? So, um, politely asking, that was paragraph 22. And so my idea is that if I want to come up with an idea and I can use some of these best ones, then you can say that Kim shows determination throughout the story, all the words from the topic, rephrase, but I have to respond. How? Through her spoken words and her unspoken thoughts. I would think that that would be the easiest one. If you have a kid who struggles, if they can just find through her actions when she finds out that the trip to the park is at the park, let me just make sure. Um, yes, it was. right there, they had a 4-day camping trip to the state park. So, um, for a kid who struggles, then they can say, uh, through her actions or her refusal, and it's all depending on your kid's vocabulary. They can keep it simple as long as they're answering the question. And so that's how you could do it. And so he's got some shoes here. So um, if I'm going to have an idea, a central idea that it's based on evidence. I'm going to make a little E here. One, two, or three pieces of evidence. It has to be evidence that ties in with the topic. So the topic and the idea based on evidence, T, I, and E, kind of corny, but um, if there's nothing that introduces the topic and the idea based on evidence, they're going to say that there's no introduction. And one of the reasons for getting a zero is if you don't introduce, they do not, as I mentioned in another video, want necessarily an introduction that has an indentation with paragraphs. The more important focus is, did they introduce the topic, introduce their idea based on evidence? So it would have been either through her spoken words and her unspoken thoughts, and use some of those as examples that you explain and tell me where the evidence is. Or you could use paragraph uh, 18 to talk about her actions. And so that if you're going to laminate it and use a dry or wet erase or a permanent marker, then depending on which means of writing you use, you can get it off and use it again multiple times. So one last time, just remember, even though this is in color, if you decide to save money and print your students' copies in black and white, they can still see that thoughts are white, opinions are blue, emotions are red, words of wisdom, quotes, truisms are green, figurative language is black, and vocabulary is gold. And this can either be reading the student writing as a response to the topic, or you might be analyzing the selection by how the author chose to separate the ideas based on actions, reactions, causes and effect, etc. So that is what maybe are more than enough ways to kind of make sure your kids understand how to respond to a topic based on character, personality. And so, a couple of ideas that I had in closing that throughout the year, because spelling is important and vocabulary, you might have a joint list of spelling and vocabulary words where the vocabulary is more based on emotions or opinions or transition words, or in this case, character traits, state of mind, state of being. All those are in the reading and writing guide on separate pages that you could build throughout the year so that your students actually have access to that vocabulary where it's not just them throwing it out there and never having been exposed to it, but little by little giving them a list of vocabulary that they can grow and know and be able to apply in um, their writing. So the idea that I had, if you use these character traits that you saw, and I'll share the screen again to make sure, you could assign or ask the students to pick a character trait or personality on this page or the other one that I made based on several of you teachers sharing with me, taking that out right now so that you can see it. This is the one that several of you added, and some blank ones. If your kids can come up with something different, great, as long as there's no repetition. I want you to notice that on page one, they're in alphabetical order, and page two, there's just a list. So you might want to practice using dictionary skills by having them put this second list in alphabetical order first on that second column, and then coming up with their own character and personality traits. And so the idea that I had was to use themselves and do a self-exploration about in when I have conflict, when something goes wrong that I don't like, what is it that are my words? What are my thoughts, my opinions, my emotions? How do I express those emotions through actions? And sometimes students really don't even know who they are. And so I would think that if you have them give a little report about themselves, the other students in the class could add and give input to that student and say, I've noticed that when you're blah, 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 one of these character traits, um, and they're focused mainly on positive because hopefully, because we live in a negative world, we can kind of shift more to positive and not focus on negativity all the time. But a couple other ways is you could watch a little tiny clip, sometimes 15 seconds of a movie, and slow the story down to just those 15 seconds and be able to analyze the character, because a lot of times your students can't read an entire passage, but they can read a paragraph. I can't watch a whole movie with great understanding, but I could watch a little clip of 15, 30 seconds a minute, and you can kind of help pick a movie, or the kids can pick their movie and say, here's the movie that I chose, or they can talk about the movie because sometimes there's inappropriate content, which we know of, or a book, and it would be a page or a paragraph of a book, and they could talk about how the character demonstrates one of those in it. So if you have a bunch of kids, let's say you have 4 or 5 classrooms, then each classroom and each child in those 4 or 5 classrooms could be assigned one character trait, and they would talk about one character from a book, from a movie, and or themselves, or both, as and or means, and be able to be better aware when it comes to not just character traits, but emotions and opinions, state of being, state of mind, all of those are inside the reading and the writing guide. So hopefully that will give you some ideas on how to steer your students out of Zero Land and La La Land to get at least a basic understanding. And so if you don't remember anything else, remember the I Love You acronym, that if your students can come up with a central idea and introduce that idea that's connected to the topic, the idea about the topic, have at least one example of evidence, and they try their best to EXP, explain it with a sentence or two, and have an ending where they can synthesize, summarize that, bring closure by again closing with the topic or their idea, restating for your kids who struggle and rephrasing for the more advanced ones, then all of a sudden you would not definitely get 4 zeros. They would see some structure of informative expository in this case, because that's what this purpose was for 5th grade. Be sure to email me if you have any questions. I did say that those of you who would like a copy of the character traits could have that for free, absolutely free. And all I would have to ask you to do is tell me in writing, in one complete sentence, one specific way that you've shown determination in spite of a conflict. Okay. So it would be nice to know what the conflict was. And it would also be great to have a specific way that you showed determination uh, to, as we learned in our dictionary, to have a firm decision or intention to reach your desired goal, regardless of the conflict or the problem that comes, that we create a resolution uh, through our determination. So, goodbye, God bless, and enjoy the rest of your week.